Hi, and welcome to RealClearFetish Talks RealClearPlay, a podcast that deals with sober life, kink life, and fetish life, and everything in between. This week, we are going to Norway to talk to Andreas, who works with Chemfriendly. Hi, Andreas.
Hello. How are you, Ralph?
I'm very well, and you?
I'm good, thank you. You're lucky that I'm kind of an attention whore who's running back and forth in the cold of Oslo to do this.
Yeah, we had a couple of technical issues at the start of the episode, but we think we've solved it now. So we are up and running and we're recording. So, as with all episodes, I start with 4 standard questions and we'll just see where the conversation goes from there.
Sure.
What do you prefer I call you? Name, pronouns, and title.
Right, so my name is Andrés. He, him are my pronouns, and I'm the chairman of the board of Chemfriendly Norway.
Fantastic. So I'll just call you chairman the whole way through.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Right, so I'm 37 years old, the gay man living in Oslo. I'm a social educator, which is kind of like an in-between nurse and a social worker. I work for Oslo municipality, a safe consumption house and public emergency public housing. And I also work for the sex workers' rights organization. So I'm sitting in their office right now, living with HIV since 2006, done quite a bit of community activism here in Oslo, both for sex workers' rights, HIV, positive people's rights, and LGBT. And now in Chemfriendly, drug users' rights and harm reduction or harm prevention information. And other than that, I think if we're talking about fetishes, the closest things to mind is being an exhibitionist, I guess. So
yeah. That is a fetish as well, and I know quite a few exhibitionists. I'm probably a little bit myself as one as well, at least when I'm at parties and so on. Completely sober, clear-headed, or a social drinker?
Yeah, so I'm very happy that I am able to enjoy alcohol when I'm social with other people or at a sex club. I like to take 1 or 2 drinks to relax a little bit before the action goes on. And I'm very lucky because I come from a family with alcohol problems. So it was kind of like a 50-50, or if I would have problems with alcohol or not. And the other chems are kind of out of the question for me. So I'm happy to have this chem to go to.
Fantastic. What is clear play to you and why is it important?
Yeah, that's
That's where we got to last time. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So what is sober play?
Yeah, sober play. Yeah.
Yeah, so well, I'm very lucky because I've had my fair share of chemsex experience, also with crystal meth, and have some addiction issues towards that drug. And I know other people who have had a lot of chemsex, and their brain makes this connection between sex and chems, typically methamphetamine, because it creates a high dopamine release in your brain. But for me, chemsex was always something that was an addition to a sober sex life that I enjoy. So I didn't have to reinvent my sober sex life. And I can now say that one of the things, who I am as a sexual person, is also because of some good experiences from chemsex.
Yeah, I think it's important that, yes, I think it's very important when you're talking about chemsex and so on. It's not going around like it's all bad and you're gonna end up an addict. Blah, blah, blah. That's not always the case. So it is like charity, like Chemfriendly is so important because they can give tools so people don't hurt themselves.
Yeah, right. So we started up as a group of activists. We were cis and trans men who launched ourselves during Oslo Pride 2018. And as queer guys, we have some relationship with chems. You know, either we've done it ourselves or somebody we know done it. It's kind of like being queer is also about drugs or intoxication, at least. And we knew that there are challenges potential challenges, and we thought, okay, we want to prevent others from going through the same shit that some of us have gone through. And the only way to do that is talking about drugs and having a facts-based approach to drugs. Talking about the different risks connected to the different drugs and how you can reduce those risks.
What brought you to help? Did you help set up the charity as well? So
yeah, I'm kind of like it was my idea. Basically.
It was your idea. Okay. So what brought that on for you to like, we need to create this. We need to offer some support to the local community when it comes to drug use. What triggered you wanting to do that?
Good question. I just remember that I just thought that, oh, we should get a group of drag artists, go to the gay bars and do some infotainment and talk about drugs, because of course we should talk about drugs. I mean, sure, like, and that's kind of like also with my sex work activism, it's also like, of course we should do that. And I never think that it's controversial or something. And I thought, okay, I know other people who might be interested in this, and I talked to them, and some of them were involved in other harm reduction organizations. So already there was user equipment and information there that we could use, so we didn't need to invent the wheel again. And yeah, so I just like to talk about this sex and drugs, basically, and I thought, okay, let's do this.
It's like here in London, we have London Friend as an organization. We also have Antidote, and we also have a charity called Controlling Chemsex, which is purely online. And of course, we also had, well, the one who actually kind of coined the concept of chemsex, the late David Stewart, who was just like a pioneer when it comes to that, and talking about it and being honest and open about it, and trying to not make it this big, scary thing everyone thinks it is. Can it go wrong? Absolutely. And like you mentioned earlier about you were lucky enough that your sex life wasn't connected to your drug using. That's what happened to me. It took 2 years to disconnect that from my sex drive, almost giving up doing fetish, doing sex more or less, because that connection had made. So when you work with peer-to-peer clients and so on in your charity, how, and this is my complete naivety, because when I saw your charity on Instagram, I was just like, in Norway, is it such a big problem in Norway?
Well, problem or
Well,
phenomenon or whatever. I guess,
phenomenon, or yeah, maybe the wrong word to use.
yeah. Well, I guess like queers do typically in most research do more drugs than the majority population. We have some few statistical, like quantitative data, which points out they're from 2016, and then it was quite low numbers compared to other European countries, especially with, okay, like David Stewart, he had a very strong, strict definition of chemsex only being methamphetamine, GHB, and methadone. Like in Chemfriendly, we have a lot broader definition, and those quantitative studies also had a broader definition. But when it came to the hard drugs like crystal methamphetamine, it was a fairly small amount of the users in this study that said that they used crystal meth. So it doesn't make sense to talk about a meth epidemic like you could reasonably talk about in the States, for example. So it depends on how you define chemsex, but when it comes to it seems like it's relatively small here. But after this study came, PrEP had been rolled out for free. That may make young queers less afraid of taking risks, and maybe that makes chemsex more appealing. So we need new numbers to see an updated picture. And I guess what really defines chemsex is the ability to travel. and Norwegians love to travel. Gays
Mm.
love to travel to Berlin, Barcelona, Gran Canaria. We're there every year, you know. So so you take the drug trends with you. I would definitely, like, if I go on Grinder, I will expect to get an offer of chemsex.
Yeah, it's very much the same here as well. It's no most of my profile will say I'm sober, so but a lot of people don't read the text, so they're just kind of like H&H or P&P depending on where you're from in the world. And then you kind of just like, okay, well, I'm sober, so we're not a match. That's fine. And move on. Sometimes that can be quite frustrating as a sober person, absolutely. But yeah, it is about where we travel to. Definitely here in London, it's quite a big problem. How did you find? I know it's a long time since I've talked about this, but how did you find? I know you set up Chemfriendly in 18. How did you find navigating like the pandemic? Because a lot of things, all of a sudden, you're not leaving your house, and there was quite a big spike of drug usage here. I don't know how it was in Norway.
Yeah, so here, you know, as other places, you couldn't go to work, or a lot of people. I could go to work because I'm a healthcare professional, but a lot of people
Mm.
couldn't. So the day-to-day routines were broken, and that meant that also for some chemsex participants who limited their participation to when they went to Gran Canaria or Berlin, they didn't have that option. And
Mm.
for some, that meant more drug use here. Some people, of course, when the normal day-to-day routine started, adjusted back. Others did not. Again, we don't have any numbers, but we could see that there was changing in chemsex behavior because it became closer to home. You didn't have the day-to-day routines. And we also had to reinvent how we talked about harm reduction. For example, like the one of the most important advices is like, don't do chems alone. But during the pandemic, some people started doing, you know, online chemsex because they didn't want to meet other people. So it kind of like, okay, but then people are doing chemsex alone. So we had to readjust the way we thought about harm reduction.
Yeah, I remember the start of the pandemic, especially around this format, Zoom. Zoom used to be quite rife with chemsex chat rooms. So it took me maybe like 10 days to get my head around using Zoom again because I had completely deleted my account. I didn't have it on my phone. It was
Yeah.
very triggering. But all of a sudden, I went from using crystal meth and slamming on camera to doing game night with my friends on Zoom instead. So it was it was challenging to go back to it, but also it was also kind of reclaiming this program to make it something safe and fun.
Yeah, and then you started associating it with connection to other people,
Mm.
which is, I guess, also in the beginning of this October, we had a chemsex conference here in Oslo, and we had Dr. David Fawcett here, and he talked about people getting to back together to a sober sex life, and how this connectability to other people is what can make these new ways of relating to sex or Zoom worth it, or possible, I guess.
Yeah, it's creating new pathways. That's also why, for example, if you are stop doing drugs and you want to re-engage with things, is having a safety net is really important. And it's also sometimes you have to challenge yourself and go back to not necessarily somewhere where you'd heavy drugs might be involved, but go back to that club you used to go to, or that area of the city you used to go to, maybe with a friend and so on. It's just creating new pathways and new positive reinforcement. For example, last time I was in Chicago, I ended up on a 4-day bender. And that is the place I want to reclaim as a safe space.
If I'm going to Berlin, there's particularly one club that I will never go back to.
Hmm.
At least not for in the foreseeable future, because I did smoke crystal meth in the stall there. But me and my hubby, we were at a gay wedding in Berlin, and we went to another sex club, and that was fine. And I was also really satisfied because I was just very like, I don't want to drink today. I don't even want that one drink, because I know, and it was at the lab, so you can have like 1,500 guys in there, and I was like, I know I'm going to be facing drugs there, and I just want to be clear-headed so that I can be in touch with my emotions and everything. And so there I could make those new connections, but I'm afraid of going to the other sex club, because I don't trust myself yet. So
That do you know what? That's an honest thing to say, and there is definitely areas I haven't gone because it's just too triggering, and that's even after 6 years. If it's not too personal, can I ask how long have you not taken hard drugs now?
it's a couple of years now.
Couple of years. And what brought you to make the decision to stop taking those drugs?
Well, I was never really, I come from a kind of unstable upbringing, so I never learned how to identify my emotions, the different emotions that I have, or sitting in them. So instead of like feeling things, I got anxiety, and then I had sex or worked out or did a lot of community activism, or helped all my friends, or do like anything but feel that anxiety or connecting with those emotions. So
Mm.
when you don't know yourself, then it's at least for my part, I didn't take care of myself in chemsex. So I started talking to very good private psychologist, who for more than a year, almost every time I met him, asked me, how are you and how do you know how you're feeling? Where does this sit in your body? So it was just introspect, introspect, introspect. And then the kind of goal was to, then I went to another psychologist, and which was also great. And we decided, okay, you can either have the goal to quit, which is very easy to put yourself up to fail, or you can have like two goals: a long term to quit, and a short term to, don't get harmed in chemsex, which
Mm.
is a more process oriented way of treatment, where you can find all these goals on your way to that maybe 10-year in the future goal to quit. But I didn't really take good care of myself in chems. And then when I started become better at taking care of myself in chems, I saw, okay, but the frequency is rising much more than I'm comfortable with.
Mm.
I can clearly see some addiction things there. And I want to point out, I didn't say that my brain doesn't make the association between sex and chems. It's just, I said that I don't, never needed to reinvent my sober sex life again, but I can still, I'm trying to befriend it, but I can still like be annoyed that if I'm jerking off, or even like when I'm having sex, to get to that climate point, like chemsex fantasies can arise.
Can pop into your head. Even after 6 years of being sober, that still happens to me, and I will also still have using dreams on occasion. It's just part of part of the. I was about to say the damage of it, but it is what it is, and the connection is still there. It's just I kind of imagine this pathway in my brain where it's slightly overgrown now. It's not been kept going. But it's still there. You can still sneak through sometimes. And it's just about being mindful about when that happens and what might trigger it. I definitely know when I get using thoughts, it's because I'm stressed. And this is what my brain does, trying to alleviate this anxiety or stress. And my brain just knows, oh, I know how to fix this. So we'll go there.
Yeah, for sure. I think like when sometimes when I'm working night shifts, that's when I need to block delete my Grinder for a while, because not having enough sleep can also make it more tempting and make me more vulnerable in all different kinds of senses. I'm more vulnerable to critique, or I take things personal, but also then it's easy that these thoughts come with a very high intensity. So for me also, it's about, as you say, mindfulness, or knowing myself to recognize those situations and kind of be ahead of myself.
Fantastic. It's staring me in the face, so I have to ask, what is the story behind your T-shirt?
Oh yeah. Well, as I said, I'm an attention whore. So like this, Latina Become Sluts, is my channel on Xhamster. So I've been dying forever to use this T-shirt, and finally you gave me an opportunity to do it. It was actually in 2019. I had done some Chemsex, and I was sitting in the week after the downtime, and I was like, right, so if all these kinky shit comes up when I'm high, maybe I should try to explore it while I'm sober. So I was thinking, who can I ask? And then a guy I knew who's kind of like, if you want an example of sex addiction, he's the one. And I was like, he can teach me. He can teach me. And so I talked to him about, my different fantasies. It was a lot of bareback related, breeding. It was about domination. And he helped me put up a profile on the Norwegian web page with this title. And he also helped me being secure in exploring these things. For example, he told me, because I thought it was like really scary, and he was like, just be honest to your partners that this is scary, that this is new for you. Don't try to be something you're not. So he was really amazing guy, and kind of like tutoring me up to being a pig. So and then I've been thinking about it. I think it was just coincidental that a sex partner of mine filmed, and I put it online, and I got positive feedback. And then I was like looking at other people putting out videos, and I was like, but the angle isn't right. You should edit it. There has to be an app, and it of course is a lot of apps to edit, and I kind of had a knack for it, probably because I'm good at storytelling. Because of my community activism, I've studied some film history and stuff. And then Norway is not like the UK or the States or France or Berlin, so it's not really that much Norwegian porn here. Now it's more normalized the last year, but it was kind of cool also to get the feedbacks from people saying, oh, it's so hot, it's in Norwegian, it feels more genuine because it's not something happening over in the UK or in the US. And suddenly I see that, hey, I'm not alone. There are other exhibitionists here who also like to join in. So
it sounds lots of fun, and it's I think it's so important, especially when you're engaging with sober sex, is reinforcement and so on. And I've met quite a few sober people who are very sex positive. I sometimes find sex a bit of a weird size for me still, and kind of getting my head around it. It depends on headspace very much for me. If I'm in the right headspace with the right person, great, go to town. I'm having a great time. If the setting is not right, or the person's not quite right, it's not going to work for me. So it's a bit of a process for me, and sometimes I've kind of just gone, this is not working.
That sounds healthy. I used a lot of years where I kind of like whipped myself, like metaphorically, because there were so many sexual things that I wanted to do, but I wasn't like mentally ready to do. And I was so happy the day where I just woke up and realized I'm fine with that. And that maybe one thing that I miss with chems then is because with chems, then you can kind of like override that. But when you're sober, you just have to, be more true to yourself. And okay, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like I have to be a chairman of an organization means that I don't have a life in certain periods of time, So that's okay. It's also been a topic for me in therapy. There was a moment where I felt that okay, the movies, the porn, and also like you publish it online, and then I use different web platforms to make ads for it. And then I'm very like focused on if people push the like button or comment, which is also like it feeds the dopamine.
Yeah.
And then I was like, maybe I'm feeling that it takes too much space. And I talked to my psychologist around it, and it didn't take more than one session with him to just think aloud that, but writing an article or an application or organizing a meeting or being with my friends is also meaningful activities to me. And I just need to be mindful that now I want to choose between something that's just as good and sometimes more important than the porn.
Yeah, it's like with anything else. Porn can be addictive, especially like yourself. It's something you publish yourself in, and you do kind of like people crave that like button a little bit sometimes, and I get that with myself as well. With this podcast, the more views or listens there are, the happier I get. But I am also quite aware that this podcast is a very niche market because it's kink and sober. It's not a broad audience. So if I get like between 50 to 200 views on YouTube, I'm quite happy. That is quite good. But I also am aware, for example, like stuff like Instagram, where you post pictures for likes and so on. I sometimes go through periods where I'm constantly scrolling and just that dopamine hit from it. And sometimes I kind of have to go, okay, I have to step back now. It's a bit much.
Yeah, and these systems, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or Xhamster, Pornhub, it's kind of like systems, systems that we navigate in our day-to-day life, which are built up like this. And of course, it's always been like that in a sense. This is just how behavior works. Behavior is driven by certain nature laws, which is about positive and negative reinforcement. You do something that gives you something you want, then you do more of it. You do something that gets rid of something you don't want, and you will do more of the thing if you have that thing you don't want. So it's a part of being human, and then you of course find some capitalist pigs, and I mean pigs in a bad way, who want to exploit on that. So
not the good pigs like you.
I'm a very good pig.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm never ever going to be on TikTok because I know the algorithms there is too addictive.
It's a challenge. I'm on there, and I mainly just joined because of COVID, and I was bored at home. But you if you end up on the wrong side of TikTok, it's quite disturbing. It's amazing what they get away with on there. It's amazing what I get away with sometimes. I don't do anything explicitly sexual, but I do videos where I'm in gear on occasion. So but that's mainly just transition videos. But it is amazing what they get away with on there, and it is a little bit scary. So talking about like Chemfriendly as an organization and so on, and it started in 2018. How was it received in the community in Norway?
Very, very good. When we started, we immediately, the group that we were had background from the drug and harm reduction, from LGBT sexual health, from HIV, community work, and sex workers' rights. So it was a very like broad cooperation between different fields where we connected into different organizations. We didn't have any funding back then. But there was like a lot of like, when we talked to other queers about it, it was like, yes, this needs to be done. Let's talk about drugs. And the drag artists in the beginning, they didn't want any money. They just thought it was fun. It was new. They like kind of intuitively understood what we were about. Probably because it probably happened in the UK as well. But you know, during the HIV epidemic in the end of the 80s and 90s, then you had the same thing, only with condoms and lubes and safer sex. And now we were just continuing that tradition and talking about safer drug use. So it was a lot of like people wanting to contribute voluntarily, and so yeah, it was fun. It felt like this is something that we're doing together as a community.
It's because sometimes when the reason I asked that question is sometimes when people hear the word harm reduction, some people it can divide a room quite quickly, because a lot of people kind of think harm reduction, well, that just gives people a reason to use. And I'm just like, no, harm reduction just means that people won't die when it's safe practices. It's just like, if they're going to do it no matter what, let's give them the tools to do it right so they don't hurt themselves. But it's not everyone that agrees with that point of view.
No, and I don't actually have a problem with people doing drugs either. So like, there's nothing morally wrong with you if you want to get intoxicated by dancing at a dance floor, having sex, drinking alcohol, or shooting meth. So as long as what we do is fact-based, I think that that's the best approach. I think, yeah. So I know it can be dividing, and I actually experienced, like in international harm reduction for us, that even harm reductionists, activists, took offense with us calling ourselves chem-friendly. Like even the people who were in the harm reduction communities had a problem with our name.
Yeah, I probably did a double take when I saw the name, to be honest, but it well, we have Mr. Friendly, or the Team Friendly in the States, which is an HIV organization. And yes, you can be friendly and still be into chems, and I like the name. I think it's inviting. For example, the one we have here, controlling chemsex, is like, it's in the name, controlling it, make sure that you're safe and so on. But it's, the thing is, you're never going to make everyone happy.
No.
And I'm quite sure there's probably a couple of people who listen to this podcast think I'm promoting people to do drugs now. That is not the case. It is mainly just like, if you're still there, you're still doing it, and you want to do a change, but it takes time to do. And this is why organizations like yours are so important, because if you are in a dark space and you want to get out of it, but you're not quite ready to let go of it, that is organizations like yours or Controlling Chemsex here can give you the tools to keep yourself safe and not, well, harm reduction. You don't get harmed.
Yeah, but I also think that it's important to agree on what we talk about when we say harm reduction or harm prevention, which I prefer. Like Norwegian health authorities kind of get stuck in this idea that harm reduction is handing out user equipment and talking about safer drugs. For us, it's also like a principle, overarching principle about nothing about us without us, that we are the experts in many ways, and that we should be involved in meaningful ways in policy work, health work, etc., involving queer and sex working drug users. And then as a method, it can be everything from giving out user equipment, talking about safer drug use at this end of the spectrum, and all the way to the other end, where it can be drug and rehabilitation services. So there's no either or. It's just a spectrum, and people will have their needs different places on this spectrum. So as I said, we had a Chemsex 2-day Chemsex conference in the beginning of October, and this is part of our patient advocacy work towards professionals in the drug and rehabilitation system, because we know that there are lots of queer guys who've been addicted to sex on drugs, who've been months in drug and rehabilitation without any possibility of talking about, the reason why I did Chemsex is because I wanted to suck dick. So we are working to also make the healthcare system more safe for chemsex participants and queer drug users. But if we go back to the name, Chemfriendly, I think it's also about having a cultural sensitivity, especially like if you're working in the healthcare system with queer people. Drugs and chemsex and chems is a part of queer, or at least Western queer history. Parties are an important part of our history and a lot of our lives. Not every single individual, but you can't talk about our history without also mentioning the role of parties and intoxication, whether it's intoxication because of dancing at rave parties or doing drugs or having sex.
It's such an intricate part of gay life, is going partying or clubbing or so on. It's I think because now I'm turning 40 next year, all of a sudden the parties are less than it used to be, but also I don't do drugs and alcohol anymore, so staying out a whole night can be quite difficult. So it's a different way of being now, but it is such a big part of what is to be gay or part of the LGBTQ plus community. And like when you talk about involving everyone and everyone, like how you approach someone who is a drug user or part of the community, I've definitely had my own experience of that, where I've had a therapist I was allocated who was a straight man, where I tried to explain BDSM to him. You almost see his eyes light up. He's like, "Oh my God, I can write a book about this one." And when you're in that vulnerable position, you don't want to explain the lingo to someone.
No, definitely not. So as the topics that have been at our Chemsex conferences, for example, this year, it was exactly one of the topics. One of the lectures was how are BDSM practitioners being experienced being met by healthcare professionals, and where the speaker gave, broadly how are BDSM people represented in the media. What are the stereotypes and what are the consequences? What are the situation around diagnostics, etc. And then we talked about relationship anarchism, because monogamy is not for everyone, and often in when it comes to chemsex rehabilitation, the goal is to get back to a healthy sexuality, which, if you're coming from a heteronormative stance, will typically be monogamy. So, to challenge these assumptions. And we also had a brilliant psychologist, I love that's called Joe Court, from the States at our first Chemsex conference. And you just get so inspired when he talks about all sexual diversity, right? And he was very talking about, and we have this talk in our YouTube channel about how healthcare practitioners can work to get to know their biases. And as he says, you don't need to understand or like anything, but you need to hide your disgust reaction. Otherwise, you lose the trust of the patient right away. And of course, just teaching the healthcare professionals why sexuality is important in the first place.
It reminds me, and it's completely off kilter, but it reminds me of when I went to International Mr. Lever back in 2009 when I competed. But they had a specific person come in and teach the cleaning staff what to expect to see in the rooms. That it's that kind of thinking you have to implement on healthcare providers as well. because the amount of times I've had to explain what PrEP is at this point to a nurse or a doctor, and I was like, well, this is because I like cum in my hole, so I need to take this medication so I don't become positive. But you don't want to be that graphic with them.
Well, I do, but I'm starting to learn that not everyone are filterless like me. But yeah, it's a sorry state. I was in a place called Stavanger, meeting a lover I had there for just a sex weekend, and I missed when I fucked him, and suddenly there was like blood everywhere. So it was a heaven to hell situation where I ended up at the emergency ward. So luckily my dick wasn't broken, so there was no pain or anything. Like I was at the hospital for one night and I was bored, so I jerked off. Like everything worked fine. But the day after, a urologist came there and he like explained to me that it wasn't broken, blah blah blah, and then okay, you can go. And I was like, what about sex? I'm here because of a problem related to sex. What about sex? That was not in his mind at all. And I just think that says something about society's relationship to sex. When a urologist having a patient who's in there because of a damage related to sex, it didn't cross his mind to say, you need to wait so many days before you're having sex.
Yeah, it's every time I've been going to the same clinic, sexual health clinic here in London since I moved here. And I've always gone in with the mind of I'm going to be honest of what my sexual practices are and so on. But my former partners who also went to the clinic were like, oh no, we filter what we say to them. It's like we don't want to give them all the details. And it's like, well, they can't give you the right treatment if you're not being completely 100% honest with what you're doing.
Exactly. And there's of course differences between cities. So like I had friends who've gotten like dildos and stuff stuck up their ass and gone to the emergency ward in Oslo. No problem. They're like super professional. They've seen it before, right? But back to my story in the Stavanger, the other city, they were like, what's that? What do you call that ring around your penis? A penis ring. And then suddenly a nurse was there to check me out, taking it off. So it was like, I felt like I was like a little museum animal showing them some new stuff. So yeah, but that's another reason why I think that as queer people, as queer guys, we should be mindful that our habits of fucking around, how we fuck around, where we fuck around, how we communicate, the language we use, is culture. It's things, actions, rituals, things that we do together. Like the fetish gear that you're wearing, you've spent your money as a consumer to realize your identity as a fetish queer, together with thousands of other guys. And that this is something that defines our life and our place in a bigger whole, and I think like in the universe, right? So I think we should be more mindful and proud of that, so that we don't feel diminished when we meet prejudice in society, but can actually defend it proudly. And I'm really annoyed every time people in the healthcare system say we're minority competent, because they never think about queer minority sexual cultures or sex workers sexual cultures and stuff.
Yeah, it's because it's such a broad spectrum, and I also think as queer community, LGBTQ plus community, we are more sexually liberated, but it also, I think it comes from being told constantly that we are wrong, we are the other, we are abnormal, we are not a part of nature, which is absolute bullshit. But so it comes, I think a lot of fetish men like me, it comes from defiance. It's like, you cannot tell me that it has to be this vanilla thing over here. I know I'm going to do this because this is my identity. This is what I enjoy. And we're much more liberated. It's just the rest of the world kind of has to keep up with us sometimes.
Yeah, that's queer people's gift to the world, is that we have think out of that box, and that is something that we can give to society.
Absolutely. So just to talk about your exhibitionist, we talked a little bit about you posting videos online. Where does your exhibitionist side come from? And when did you start like, oh, I like being a little bit more out with my sexuality?
I have no idea where it comes from, and I think it was a friend of mine who's a Kingster, and he gave me just a very good advice once, because he had been to talking to a psychologist, and he was talking about, why do I like all these things that I do, all these fetishes, and his psychologist had just asked him, do you like what you do? Are you comfortable with it? And he said yes. And then his psychologist said, then does it matter where it comes from? And I think, like, I don't care where it comes from. I just know that it is. And when I'm started thinking about it, like, since I moved to Oslo in 2006 and made a profile on this Norwegian webpage for gays and queers, there's different kinds of forums, and I've always been putting out my pictures of my naked body and my cock and everything there. So it has just been kind of like growing and growing, and I've been more secure in it as the years have gone by.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of our time. It's been absolutely a joy to talk to you about the organization, talking to you, learning a little bit more about you. If anyone's listened or watched and they've connected with something you've said, where can they get a hold of you or the organization?
Oh, thank you for that question. So, Chemfriendly, we have a webpage. We are publishing more and more English articles. So among all the Norwegian articles, you will find English articles. We have our Instagram account, Chemfriendly_Norge, which almost everything we post there is in English. And we also have a Facebook page, so where people can reach us.
Fantastic, fantastic. Is there any advice you would give someone just to round the episode off? Like a really good piece of advice you might want to pass on to someone else?
Well, I am just so happy that those two amazing psychologists that I told you about taught me that if I'm afraid to talk to my friends or others that I love about, things that I'm not proud of or things that I'm afraid I will be shunned of, then I'm denying myself intimacy, true intimacy, every time I'm not speaking. And that every time that I am sharing, I am giving myself true intimacy. So talk to the people that you love and that loves you. They are accepting of the whole package of you, not only the best of you.
Fantastic. That is a really nice thing to round off on. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the talk.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That was this week's episode. It was lovely to have Andreas on, and I am sad to say I am going to round this season off with this episode. So I'm cutting it 2 episodes short, but it's mainly because I don't have time at the moment. So I will be back next year with a new round of episodes with new guests. Stay safe, stay clear-headed, and go out and have some fun. Bye.